Book 2, the Book of the Traveller of the Worlds, Canto 6, the Kingdoms and Godheads of the Greater Life. As one who, between dim receding walls, towards the far gleam of a tunnel's mouth, hoping for light, walks now with freer pace, and feels approach a breath of wider air, so he escaped from that grey anarchy. So the grey anarchy is a reference to the plane that he has just left, which is the Godheads of the little life, the vital, lower vital plane. And now he enters into another plane of consciousness, another rung of consciousness, which is what is going to be described here. As one who between dim receding walls, towards the far gleam of a tunnel's mouth, hoping for light, walks now with freer pace, and feels approach a breath of wider air, so he escaped from that grey anarchy. Into an ineffectual world he came, a purposeless region of arrested birth, where being from non-being fled and dared to live, but had no strength long to abide. Description of the world that Ashwapati enters now. He escapes into this ineffectual world where this is the region of arrested birth, where being from non-being fled and dared to live, but had no strength long to abide. Above there gleamed a pondering brow of sky, tormented, crossed by wings of doubtful haze, adventuring with a voice of roaming winds, and crying for a direction in the void, like blind souls looking for the selves they lost, and wandering through unfamiliar worlds. Wings of vague questioning met the query of space. After denial dawned a dubious hope, a hope of self and form, and leave to live, and the birth of that which never yet could be, and joy of the mind's hazard, the heart's choice, grace of the unknown, and hands of sudden surprise, and a touch of sure delight in unsure things. To a strange, uncertain tract his journey came, where consciousness played with unconscious self, and birth was an attempt or episode. A charm drew near that could not keep its spell, an eager power that could not find its way, a chance that chose a strange arithmetic, but could not bind with it the forms it made, a multitude that could not guard its sum, which less than zero grew and more than one, arriving at a large and shadowy sense that cared not to define its fleeting drift. Life labored in a strange and mythic air, denuded of her sweet, magnificent suns. In worlds imagined, never yet made true, a lingering glimmer on creation's verge, one strayed and dreamed and never stopped to achieve. To achieve would have destroyed that magic space. So this was the region that Ashwapati enters, where things are and then they disappear. Nothing is permanent. There is this everything that is trying to become and then does not completely arrive. And there's a certain magic and charm in this place, a multitude that could not guard its sum, which less than zero grew in more than one, arriving at a large and shadowy sense that cared not to define its fleeting drift. Life labored in a strange and mythic air. So this was again the plane of life, but it was a strange kind of ethereal life which appeared and disappeared. Beings appeared, took sort of births or tried to take birth, then disappeared, denuded of her sweet, magnificent sons, in worlds imagined, never yet made true, a lingering glimmer on creation's verge. The one strayed and dreamed and never stopped to achieve. To achieve would have destroyed that magic space, the marvels of a twilight wonderland, full of a beauty strangely, vainly made, a surge of fanciful realities, dim tokens of a splendor sealed above, awoke the passion of the eye's desire, compelled belief on the enamored thought, and drew the heart, but led it to no goal. A magic flowed, as if of moving scenes, that kept awhile their fugitive delicacy, of sparing lines limned by an abstract art, in a rare, scanted light with faint dream brush, on a silver background of incertitude, an infant glow of heavens, near to morn, a fire intense, conceived but never lit, caressed the air with ardent hints of day. The perfect longing for imperfection's charm, the illumined caught by the snare of ignorance. Ethereal creatures, drawn by body's lure, to that region of promise, beating invisible wings, came hungry for the joy of finite life, but too divine to tread created soil and share the fate of perishable things. So these ethereal creatures who were drawn by the body's law, the idea of having a physical body, entering into and entering, came to this region of promise, beating invisible wings, came hungry for the joy of finite life, but too divine to tread created soil and share the fate of perishable things. The children of the unembodied gleam, arisen from a formless thought in the soul and chased by an imperishable desire, traverse the field of the pursuing gaze, a will that unpersisting failed, worked there. Life was a search, but finding never came. There nothing satisfied, but all allured, things seemed to be that never wholly are. Images were seen that looked like living acts, and symbols hid the sense they claimed to show. Pale dreams grew real to the dreamer's eyes. The souls came there that vainly strive for birth, and spirits entrapped might wander through all time, yet never find the truth by which they live. All ran like hopes that hunt a lurking chance. So the souls came there that vainly strive for birth, and spirits entrapped might wander through all times, yet never find the truth by which they live. All ran like hopes that hunt a lurking chance. Nothing was solid, nothing felt complete. All was unsafe, miraculous, and half true. It seemed a realm of lives that had no base. So this is where Ashwapati is now entered. Then dawned a greater seeking, broadened sky. So from this realm where everything was there and yet was half true, unsafe, miraculous, came and went, he enters into another place. Obviously, within each kingdom, there are various planes or various stations. Then dawned a greater seeking, broadened sky. The sky broadens and a greater seeking dawns. A journey under wings of brooding force. First came the kingdom of the morning star. So he enters the kingdom of the morning star. What is the morning star? You know, Venus. So, a journey under wings of brooding force. First came the kingdom of the morning star. A twilight beauty trembled under its spear, and the throb of promise of a wider life. Then slowly rose a great and doubting sun, and in its light she made of self a world. So obviously the pure description of his journey. A twilight beauty trembled under its spear, and the throb of promise of a wider life. Then slowly rose a great and doubting sun, and in its light she made of self a world. A spirit was there that sought for its own deep self, yet was content with fragments pushed in front, and parts of living that belied the whole, but pieced together might one day be true. Yet something seemed to be achieved at last, a growing volume of the will to be, a text of living and a graph of force, a script of acts, a song of conscious forms, burdened with meanings, fugitive from thought's grasp, and crowded with the undertones of life's rhythmic cry, could write itself on the hearts of living things. In an outbreak of the might of secret spirit, in life and matter's answer of delight, some face of deathless beauty could be caught that gave immortality to a moment's joy, some word that could incarnate highest truth leaped out from a chance tension of the soul. Some hue of the absolute could fall on life, some glory of knowledge and intuitive sight, some passion of the rapturous heart of love, a hierophant of the bodiless secrecy, interned in an unseen spiritual sheath, the will that pushes sense beyond its scope, to feel the light and joy intangible, half found its way into the ineffable space, half captured a sealed sweetness of desire that yearned from a bosom of mysterious bliss, half manifested veiled reality, a soul not wrapped into a cloak of mind, could glimpse the true sense of a world of forms, illumined by a vision in the thought, upbuoyed by the heart's understanding flame. It could hold in the conscious ether of the spirit the divinity of a symbol universe. So here he enters this kingdom of the morning star, and there he sees the twilight beauty trembled, the throb of a promise of a wider life, and so on. And a spirit was there that sought its own deep self. So this was a little more higher and a little deeper realm than the one he just passed. But in this realm, because there's no mind, the sheath of mind is missing, the soul can experience and see things directly from the vital, the higher vital being is what is guiding the soul, not the mind. So here you see this description as he explains it. A spirit was there that sought for its own deep self, yet was content with fragments pushed in front, and parts of living that belied the whole, but pieced together, might one day be true. Yet something seemed to be achieved at last, a growing volume of the will to be. See, there was no will to be there in the last plane that he was in. Here, the will to be has come in. So obviously he's gone to a higher level of the vital plane. So here, yet something seemed to be achieved at last, a growing volume of the will to be, a text of living and a graph of force, a script of acts, a song of conscious forms, burdened with meanings fugitive from thought's grasp, and crowded with undertones of life's rhythmic cry. So burdened with meanings fugitive from thought's grasp. Thought doesn't have its grasp in this plane. So it's a fugitive thought that has come in. So you see the way he writes. Burdened with meanings fugitive from thought's grasp, and crowded with undertones of life's rhythmic cry, could write itself on the hearts of living things. In an outbreak of the might of secret spirit, in life and matter's answer of delight, some face of deathless beauty could be caught, that gave immortality to a moment's joy, some word that could incarnate highest truths, leaped out from a chance tension of the soul, some hue of the absolute could fall on life, some glory of knowledge and intuitive sight, some passion of the rapturous heart of love, a hierophant of the bodiless secrecy. What is hierophant? You know what a hierophant is? So, these mystical, magical, those beings that have those powers, they're called hierophants. So kind of a being, a hierophant of the bodiless secrecy, interned in an unseen spiritual sheath. So this being who has these mystical, magical, occult powers, interned in an unseen spiritual sheath, the will that pushes, sense beyond its scope, to feel the light and joy intangible, half found its way into the ineffable space, half captured, a sealed sweetness of desire that yearned from a bosom of mysterious bliss, half manifested veiled reality. So here, the word half, the word some, these are the way the Sri Aurobindo describes the change. It's not a fullness, but there is some half of this and half of that. So you can see through, mission of his words, how these planes are moving towards higher, slightly higher states, but not fully manifested as they will be in the later cantos. So half captured a sealed sweetness of desire that yearned from a bosom of mysterious bliss, half manifested veiled reality. Reality with a capital R. A soul not wrapped into its cloak of mind could glimpse the true sense of a world of forms, illumined by a vision in the thought, upbuoyed by the heart's understanding flame. It could hold in the conscious ether of the spirit the divinity of a symbol universe. This realm inspires us with our vaster hopes. So how does this realm impact the human world is what he's now talking about. This realm inspires us with our vaster hopes. So that in us, what is it in us that is in communion with this realm, and how does that realm influence the human consciousness in the human world? This realm inspires us with our vaster hopes. Its forces have made landings on our globe. So, in America and all over, they've been doing a lot of research. Are they terrestrial forces and beings? Are they, landings from different planets and different planes that come on Earth? Sri Aurobindo seems to say yes, very clearly. So, a very interesting, particular way that he describes it. This realm inspires us with our vaster hopes. Its forces have made landings on our globe. Its signs have traced their pattern in our lives. It lends a sovereign movement to our fate. I don't know whether that UFO was there just to stop India from winning, because it arrived just when we started and disappeared when 5 wickets went down. So I noted the time. Its arrival and departure. So what that force was, we don't know. But we certainly played extremely strangely. So, its forces have made landings on our globe. Its signs have traced their pattern in our lives. It lends a sovereign movement to our fate. Its errant waves motive our life's high search. All that we seek for is prefigured there, and all we have not known nor ever sought, which yet one day must be born in human hearts, that the timeless may fulfill itself in things, incarnate in the mystery of the days, eternal in an unclosed infinite, a mounting endless possibility, climbs high upon a topless ladder of dream, forever in the being's conscious trance. All on that ladder mounts to an unseen end, an energy of perpetual transience makes the journey from which no return is sure, the pilgrimage of nature to the unknown. As if in her ascent to her lost source, she hoped to unroll all that could ever be. So this is, of course, a description of this kingdom of the greater life, which is the higher vital planes from which impact us on this earth and in ourselves. And this following description, as if in her ascent to her lost source, is a reference to nature, the pilgrimage of nature to the unknown. As if in her ascent to her lost source, she hoped to unroll all that could ever be. Her high procession moves from stage to stage, a progress leap from sight to greater sight, a process march from form to ampler form, a caravan of the inexhaustible formations of a boundless thought and force. Her timeless power that lay once on the lap of a beginningless and endless calm, now severed from the spirit's immortal bliss, erects the type of all the joys she has lost. She hopes by the creative act's release to overleap sometimes the gulf she cannot fill, to heal awhile the wounds of severance, escape from the moment's prison of littleness, and meet the eternal wide sublimities in the uncertain time field portioned here. Almost she nears what never can be attained. She shuts eternity into an hour and fills a little soul with the infinite. So this is, of course, continuing the description of nature, Prakriti, the life force, the higher life force, and how she acts. Even this greater life, Godheads of the greater life, life itself is what we say is the higher life force, prana, Prakriti, nature, but this is the higher life, or the greater life. These chapters are these cantos are so long, so they obviously have a great significance that we as human beings still need to discover why Sri Aurobindo spent so much time writing these cantos. The Traveller of the Worlds is one of the largest books in the whole of Savitri. And each canto goes on in great precise descriptions. So She shuts eternity into an hour and fills the little soul with the infinite. The immobile leans to the magic of her call. She stands on a shore in the illimitable, perceives the formless dweller in all forms, and feels around her infinity's embrace. Her task no ending knows, she serves no aim, but labors driven by a nameless will that came from some unknowable formless vast. This is her secret and impossible task, to catch the boundless in a net of birth, to cast the spirit into physical form, to lend speech and thought to the ineffable. She is pushed to reveal the ever unmanifest. So this is the task that has been given to this greater life, nature, the higher force. This is a secret and impossible task, to catch the boundless in a net of birth, to cast the spirit into physical form, to lend speech and thought to the ineffable. She is pushed to reveal the ever unmanifest. Yet by her skill, the impossible has been done. She follows her sublime, irrational plan, invents devices of her magic art to find new bodies for the infinite and images of the unimaginable. She has lured the eternal into the arms of time. So what she has lured, who has lured? This is the nature, the life force, what we call as that which animates and which creates, the creator, the creative force, para-prakriti, and in the lower hemisphere, prakriti, and so on. This is a wonderful description here again. Sri Aurobindo is giving of the action and the reason, why nature has come into matter, From matter, life evolves, from life, mind evolves. So this is the secret purpose of nature and of the life force and of the greater life force, in fact. What its purpose is in coming into the world, into the earth life, and into the earth consciousness, and into human life, and all life for that matter. So she has lured the eternal into the arms of time. Even now, herself she knows not what she has done, for all is wrought beneath a baffling mask, a semblance other than its hidden truth. The aspect wears of an illusion's trick, a feigned, time-driven unreality. So even now herself she knows not what she has done, for all is done beneath a baffling mask. The outer life, the outer mask of what we see hides this inner task and this inner meaning, a semblance other than its hidden truths. The aspect wears of an illusion's trick, a feigned, time-driven unreality, the unfinished creation of a changing soul in a body, changing with the inhabitant, insignificant her means, infinite her work. On a great field of shapeless consciousness, in little finite strokes of mind and sense, an endless truth she endlessly unfolds. So again, insignificant her means, infinite her work. In little finite strokes of mind and sense, an endless truth she endlessly unfolds. A timeless mystery works out in time. The greatness she has dreamed, her acts have missed. Her labor is a passion and a pain, a rapture and pang, her glory and her curse. And yet she cannot choose, but labors on. Her mighty heart forbids her to desist. As long as the world lasts, her failure lives astonishing and foiling reason's gaze, a folly and a beauty unspeakable, a superb madness of the will to live, a daring, a delirium of delight. A superb madness of the will to live, a daring, a delirium of delight. This is her being's law, its sole resource. She sates, though satisfaction never comes. Her hungry will to lavish everywhere, her many-imaged fictions of the self, and thousand fashions of one reality. A world she made touched by truth's fleeing hem, a world cast into a dream of what it seeks, an icon of truth, a conscious mystery's shape. It lingered not like the earth mind, hemmed in solid barriers of apparent fact. It dared to trust the dream mind and the soul, a hunter of spiritual verities, still only thought or guessed or held by faith. It seized in imagination and confined, a painted bird of paradise in a cage. This greater life is enamored of the unseen. It's a hunter, this greater life is a hunter of spiritual verities, which it seizes in imagination and confines like a painted bird of paradise in a cage. The bird of paradise is the supramental bird. The meaning of bird of paradise by the mother when she gave the meanings of the flowers is a supramental bird. Now, so you see how he uses this. Nobody would know unless you knew the spiritual meaning of the word. So obviously it's an indication and a hint that this greater life, even this greater vital or this greater life force, which is so-called seems to be submerged and unable to escape from its own imperfection, as Sri Aurobindo puts it. And as you see in our life at present, there is behind it this seeking for the supramental world, the supramental life. So this one life gives you the hint that in every single plane, there is, as soon as you enter out, there is something behind this mystery of life, this mystery of the world. And there is a seeking that actually is pushing each force. Now, of course, this is a pure description of the life plane, of the higher life plane or the greater life. But this plane of consciousness impacts us. We can see it, we can feel it in our lives, in earth life. So it's something that is the prototypal plane from which these forces impact earth. So a hunter of spiritual verities, still only thought or guessed or held by faith, it seized in imagination and confined, a painted bird of paradise in a cage. So, of course, here the word in a cage is a very important qualifying thing, that it is seized in imagination and confines a painted bird of paradise in a cage. So there is the confinement of this is still, it's not the higher planes where this cage is not required. So this greater life is enamored of the unseen. Now this is the direct description of this greater life, which is the name of this canto. This greater life is enamored of the unseen. It calls to some highest light beyond its reach. So what is this highest light beyond its reach? The supermind. And the reason we can say that is because of that one sentence before. So this greater life is enamored of the unseen. It calls to some highest light beyond its reach. It can feel the silence that absolves the soul. It feels a savior touch, a ray divine. Beauty and good and truth, its Godheads are. So this is very important. Beauty, good, Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram. We come back to the ancient thing of the Upanishads. Beauty, good and truth. These are the three attributes of the psychic being. If you notice all Mother's writings, truth, beauty, and good. If you look at Upanishads, the same three, truth, beauty, and good, whether you then in the highest planes go to Satchidananda, in the lower planes, Satyam, Shivam, Sundaram, and so on. So all of these, everything in the Savitri is, in English, but it has it's the depth of its meaning when you go deeper and deeper at so many levels that it's unfathomable. So there's one line written here. You might think it's, beauty, truth, but if you go deeply into it, whole philosophies and one more book can be written on only these 4 lines. So this greater life is enamored of the unseen. It calls to some highest light beyond its reach. It can feel the silence that absolves the soul. It feels a savior touch, a ray divine, beauty and good and truth. Its Godheads are. It is near to heavenlier heavens than earth's eyes see, a dire darkness than man's life can bear. It has a kinship with the demon and the God. So both, it is near to the heavenlier heavens, and it is also has a kinship with the dire darkness that man's life can bear. It has a kinship with the demon and the God. So this plane of the higher, greater life is in between. It is close to both, and therefore you can see how both these can influence. One can pull you down into what we read as the darker planes, and one can pull you up. Depends on the choice you make. It is near to heavenlier heavens than earth's eyes see, a dire darkness than man's life can bear. It has kinship with the demon and the God. A strange enthusiasm has moved its heart. It hungers for heights. It passions for the supreme. It hunts for the perfect word, the perfect shape. It leaps to the summit thought, the summit light. For by the form, the formless is brought close, and all perfection fringes the absolute. A child of heaven who never saw his home, its impetus meets the eternal at a point. It can only near and touch, it cannot hold. It can only strain towards some bright extreme. Its greatness is to seek and to create. On every plane, this greatness must create. What is this greatness that he's referring to? This greater life, consciousness, life force. On every plane, this greatness must create. On earth, in heaven, in hell, she is the same. Of every fate, she takes her mighty part, a guardian of the fire that lights the suns. She triumphs in her glory and her might. Opposed, oppressed, she bears God's urge to be born. The spirit survives upon non-being's ground. World force outlasts, world disillusions shock. So the spirit survives upon non-being's ground, and qualifying that, world force outlasts world disillusion shock. So this non-being's ground is world disillusion shock, which the world force outlasts. Dumb, she is still the word, inert the power. Here fallen, a slave of death and ignorance. Here meaning on earth. Here fallen, a slave of death and ignorance. But in her original self, she is not fallen or a slave of death and ignorance, but here on earth, because she falls. The greater life, when it comes down to earth, has to fall. So that fallen self is a slave of death and ignorance. This, what we see as our life. But actually behind our life and behind the life force that governs us and governs the earth is this being that is thirsting for the higher and the absolute. So the real power which is hidden behind life is what Sri Aurobindo is talking about here, and what Ashwapati, when he goes into this plane of consciousness, he sees it. He understands this. He begins to unravel the mystery of life, of this earthly life, what we are experiencing. We only see the outer life, which is full of ignorance and death and, error and imperfection. But this is where the origin of this life, this Godhead, is actually something else, which is what Ashwapati discovers. On every plane this greatness must create. So if one really begins to internalize these lines and begins to meditate on this, contemplate this, and see behind the outer mask of our own lives and of earth life, you will begin to see things differently. There will be a certain joy and a certain sense of bliss that will run through the veins of the blood in your veins or your nerves. Every time you will perceive reality differently to the way it is being played out. And each time you will begin to see the glass half full rather than half empty. See the beauty and what the divine is seeking to. But for that, one has to have one psychic being in front. Why the psychic being in front? Because the psychic being is what holds truth, good and beauty as its signposts and its lamp. With the mind, one cannot see it. With the outer vital being, one cannot perceive this. But with the psychic nature and the psychic presence of the psychic being, it immediately recognizes it. And when we are sitting here together in this room, because we are all quiet and still and concentrated, and our psychic is more outwardly expressive and comes out a bit, you can sense the beauty of this. You can sense the truth in these words. And we are all uplifted by that truth. And it is the real work is to keep the psychic being in front when we walk out of these doors and go back to our day-to-day life. So, the spirit survives upon non-being's ground. World force outlasts, world disillusion's shock. Dumb, she is still the word, inert the power. Here fallen, a slave of death and ignorance. To things deathless, she is driven to aspire and moved to know even the unknowable. Even nescient, null, her sleep creates a world. When most unseen, most mightily she works. Housed in the atom, buried in the clod, her quick, creative passion cannot cease. In conscience is her long, gigantic pause. Her cosmic swoon is a stupendous phase. Time-born, she hides her immortality. Note this word. Time-born, this greater life, this life force, hides her immortality. And if she did not hide it, we could not thus achieve an immortal life and an immortal consciousness, unless it is what is hidden can only, what is involved can evolve. So time-born, she hides her immortality. In death, her bed, she waits the hour to rise. Even with the light denied that sent her forth, and the hope dead she needed for her task, even when her brightest stars are quenched in night, nourished by hardship and calamity, and with pain for her body's handmaid, Massius nurse, her tortured, invisible spirit continues still to toil though in darkness, to create though with pangs. She carries crucified God upon her breast. So note here the words, even when her brightest stars are quenched in night, nourished by hardship and calamity. Notice the word nourished by hardship and calamity. What does it tell you? What is the role of hardship and calamity? Strengthening, yes. So hardship and calamity strengthen her. This is the test of fire that makes gold. You cannot become gold unless you go through. Yeah, so how is gold made? What does the alchemist do when he makes gold? It's the same for our lives. We need to get into the fire and life will push us. We don't need to make those choices. It will push us till we become gold. And that is what here she's saying. Even with the light denied that sent her forth, and the hope dead she needed for her task, even when her brightest stars are quenched in night, nourished by hardship and calamity, and with pain for her body's handmaid. So the handmaid, pain for her body's handmaid, Macius, nurse, her tortured, invisible spirit, continues still to toil though in darkness, to create though with pangs. She carries crucified God upon her breast, in chill, insentient depths, where joy is none, immured, oppressed by the resisting void, where nothing moves and nothing can become. Still she remembers, still invokes the skill the wonder worker gave her at her birth. So the wonder worker, of course, is a reference to the absolute creatrix. Still she remembers, still invokes the skill the wonder worker gave her at her birth, imparts to drowsy formlessness a shape, reveals a world where nothing was before, in realms confined to a prone circle of death, to a dark eternity of ignorance, a quiver in an inert, inconscient mask, or imprisoned in immobilized worlds of force, by matter's blind compulsion, deaf and mute, she refuses motionless in the dust to sleep. Then, for her rebel waking's punishment, given only hard mechanic circumstance, as the enginery of her magic craft, she fashions godlike marvels out of mud. In the plasm she sets her dumb immortal urge, helps the live tissue to think, the closed sense to feel, flashes through the frail nerves, poignant messages, in a heart of flesh, miraculously loves, to brute bodies gives a soul, a will, a voice. Ever she summons, as by a sorcerer's wand, beings and shapes and scenes innumerable, torch-bearers of her pomps through time and space. This world is her long journey through the night, the suns and planets, lamps to light her road. Our reason is the confidant of her thoughts. Our senses are her vibrant witnesses. There, drawing her signs from things half true, half false, she labors to replace by realized dreams the memory of her lost eternity. As you know, this poem is written in the iambic pentameter. So there is a rhythm to the syllables, stress, unstress, and so on. There are 5 syllables. And that's why it's mantric poetry. If you notice the way that Sri Aurobindo has used a very deliberate and a very interesting meter when he's written this. so that it has that power to enter into the consciousness. So we start here. These are her deeds in this huge world ignorance. Till the veil is lifted, till the night is dead. In light or dark, she keeps her tireless search. Time is her road of endless pilgrimage. One mighty passion motives all her works. Her eternal lover is her action's cause. For him she leaped forth from the unseen vasts to move here in a stark, unconscious world. Its acts are her commerce with her hidden guest. His moods she takes for her heart's passionate molds. In beauty she treasures the sunlight of his smile. Ashamed of her rich cosmic poverty, she cajoles with her small gifts his mightiness, holds with her scenes his looks' fidelity, and woos his large-eyed wandering thoughts to dwell in figures of her million impulsed force. So what is this a reference to? Her eternal lover is her action's cause. Who is her eternal lover here? Yes, eternal lover is her action's cause. For him she leaped forth from the unseen vasts to move here on earth in a stark, unconscious world. Its acts are her commerce with her hidden guest. His mood she takes for her heart's passionate moods. In beauty she treasures the sunlight of his smile. Ashamed of her rich cosmic poverty. Rich and poverty on the same line. So it's an interesting, oxymoron, yes. So what does it mean here? Ashamed of her rich cosmic poverty. So the cosmos is rich, but it's still poor. So ashamed of her rich cosmic poverty, she cajoles with her small gifts his mightiness, holds with her scenes his looks' fidelity, and woos his large-eyed wandering thoughts to dwell in figures of her million impulsed force, only to attract her veiled companion and keep him close to her breast in her world cloak, lest from her arms he turn to his formless peace. So this eternal lover that has sent her forth is what she constantly is aware of and sees in each and every thing, and woos his large-eyed wandering thoughts to dwell in figures of her million impulse force, only to attract her veiled companion. Her veiled companion is the Creatrix Supreme, and keep him close to her breast in her world cloak, lest from her arms he turn to his formless peace, is her heart's business and her clinging care. Yet, when he is most near, she feels him far, for contradiction is her nature's law. Although she is ever in him, and he in her, the two in one, the Purusha and Prakriti, the Shakti, so yet when he is most near, she feels him far, for contradiction is her nature's law. Although she is ever in him and he in her, as if unaware of the eternal tie, her will is to shut God into her works and keep him as her cherished prisoner, that never they may part again in time. So what is her will? To shut God into her works and keep him as her cherished prisoner, that never they may part again in time. A sumptuous chamber of the spirit's sleep at first she made, a deep interior room where he slumbers as if a forgotten guest. But now she turns to break the oblivious spell, awakes the sleeper on the sculptured couch. She finds again the presence in the form, and in the light that wakes him, recovers a meaning in the hurry and trudge of time. And through this mind that once obscured the soul, passes a glint of unseen deity. Across a luminous dream of spirit space, she builds a creation like a rainbow bridge between the original silence and the void. A net is made of the mobile universe. She weaves a snare for the conscious infinite. A knowledge is with her that conceals its steps and seems a mute, omnipotent ignorance. A might is with her that makes wonders true. The incredible is her stuff of common fact. Her purposes, her workings, riddles prove. Examined, they grow other than they were. Explained, they seem yet more inexplicable. Even in our world, a mystery has reigned. Earth's cunning screen of trivial plainness hides. Her larger levels are of sorceries made. There the enigma shows its splendid prism. There is no deep disguise of commonness. Occult, profound, comes all experience. Marvel is ever new, miracle divine. So she weaves a snare for the conscious infinite. And a knowledge is with her that conceals its steps. Whose steps? The steps of the conscious infinite. And seems a mute, omnipotent ignorance. A might is with her that makes wonders true. The incredible is her stuff of common fact, and so on. So again, this idea which Sri Aurobindo keeps repeating in Savitri is the idea that the world and the earth is a mystery. This idea of the mysterious occult, that there is something behind the screen of ordinary daily life, of the earthly life, of what we see and sense with our outer senses. There is a deeper mystery behind that is concealed. And he constantly brings this fact forward, and that is what yoga helps us to do. It helps us to unveil that mystery. The moment the inner vision is open, the moment the psychic presence is in front, this inner eye or the third eye opens. And then you get this true vision of the world as it truly is and not as it appears to be. So even in our world, a mystery has reigned. Earth's cunning screen of trivial plainness hides. Her larger levels are of sorceries made. There the enigma shows its splendid prism. There is no deep disguise of commonness. So this deep disguise of commonness is then no longer there. When this inner vision and this knowledge is concealed. And it is this higher prakriti, this para-prakriti as you call it, is what actually concealed it. But she has a purpose from the omnipotent to come into this earth and do her work. So there the enigma shows its splendid prism. There is no deep disguise of commonness. Occult, profound, comes all experience. Marvel is ever new, miracle divine. There is a screened burden, a mysterious touch. There is a secrecy of hidden sense. Although no earthen mask weighs on her face, into herself she flees from her own sight. All forms are tokens of some veiled idea, whose covert purpose lurks from mind's pursuit, yet is a womb of sovereign consequence. There, every thought and feeling is an act. So there, every thought and feeling is an action, and every act a symbol and a sign. And every symbol hides a living power. A universe she builds from truths and myths, but what she needed most, she cannot build. So a universe she builds from truths and myths, but what she needed most, she cannot build. All shown is a figure or copy of the truth, but the real veils from her its mystic face. All else she finds there lacks eternity. All is sought out, but missed the infinite. So she builds a universe from truths and myths, but what she needs most she cannot build. The real, and what is it that she needs most? The real, which veils its face from her mystic face. Veils from her its mystic face, all else she finds. There lacks eternity, all is sought out, but missed the infinite. A consciousness lit by a truth above was felt. It saw the light, but not the truth. It caught the idea and built from it a world. It made an image there and called it God. Yet something true and inward harbored there. So now goes on to say, a consciousness lit by a truth above was felt. It saw the light, but not the truth. It caught the idea and built from it a world. It made an image there and called it God. The idea is, of course, with a capital I. Yet something true and inward harbored there. The beings of that world of greater life, tenants of a larger air and freer space, live not by the body or in outward things. A deeper living was their seat of self. In that intense domain of intimacy, objects dwell as companions of the soul. The body's actions are a minor script, the surface rendering of a life within. All forces are life's retinue in that world, and thought and body as her handmaids move. The universal widenesses give her room. All feel the cosmic movement in their acts and are the instruments of her cosmic might. So again, he's describing this plane of consciousness where he says, even though in this kingdom and of this greater life, this plane of this consciousness, there is a higher light, but the light can be seen, but not the truth behind. It's a kind of a reflection again of what the last line, all else she finds there lacks eternity. So in this plane of consciousness of the greater life, everything she finds but lacks eternity. All is sought out but missed the infinite. So following that, a consciousness lit by a truth above was felt. It saw the light but not the truth. It caught the idea and built from it a world. It made an image there and called it God. Yet something true and inward harbored there, even though it did not catch the full truth. Something true and inward harbored there. The beings of that world of greater life. Now he's describing the beings of this world of greater life where Ashwapati has just entered. He's describing who these beings are that live in this consciousness and this plane of consciousness of the greater life. The beings of that world of greater life, tenants of a larger air and freer space, live not by the body or in outward things. A deeper living was their seat of self. In that intense domain of intimacy, objects dwell as companions of the soul. The body's actions are a minor script, the surface rendering of a life within. So the life within is more important, not the outer life in this world and for these beings who live here. All forces are life's retinue in that world, and thought and body as her handmaids move. The universal widenesses give her room. All feel the cosmic movement in their acts, and are the instruments of her cosmic might. Or their own self they make their universe. In all who have risen to a greater life, a voice of unborn things whispers to the ear. So all those who have risen to this greater life, these beings, They hear a voice of unborn things whispers to the ear. To their eyes, visited by some high sunlight, aspiration shows the image of a crown to work out a seed that she has thrown within. To achieve her power in them, her creatures live. Each is a greatness growing towards the heights, or from his inner center, oceans out. Encircling ripples of concentric power, they swallow, glutted, their environment. Even of that largeness many a cabin make. In narrower breadths and briefer vistas spent, they live content with some small greatness won. So in narrower breadths and briefer vistas spent, they live content with some small greatness won. To rule the little empire of themselves, to be a figure in their private world, and make the milieu's joys and griefs their own, and satisfy their life motives and life wants, is charge enough and office for this strength. A steward of the person and his fate, this was transition line and starting point. A first immigration into heavenliness for all who cross into that brilliant sphere. These are the kinsmen of our earthly race. This region borders on our mortal state. So this is very important. Here, Sri Aurobindo is explaining that this kingdom of the greater light is very close to our mortal state. That means very close to our mortal consciousness. And therefore these beings have a great power and play over mortal life. So if you read again, though they have this greatness, they have a certain aspiration, yet they still seem to be, even of that largeness many a cabin make, in narrower breadths and briefer vistas. Pent, they live content with some small greatness won. There is a greatness, but it is still cabined. To rule the little empire of themselves, to be a figure in their private world, and make the milieu's joys and griefs their own, and satisfy their life motives and life wants, is charge enough and office for this strength. A steward of the person and his fate, a steward of the person with a capital P and his fate. So this kingdom was a transition line and starting point. And this plane and this, it was like a first immigration into heavenliness. It was the first office, the first plane that could bring you to a greater heavenliness. But it was great, it was wide, it had certain powers, it was a greater life, but it did not have the full truth and full power. So this was a transition line and starting point, a first immigration into heavenliness for all who cross into that brilliant sphere. These are the kinsmen of our earthly race. Kinsmen of our earthly race, what does it refer to here? These are the kinsmen of our earthly race. So this region is, what he's saying here, is very close to our human earthly consciousness, plane of consciousness, that's all. They've risen from the mortal state or not, we don't know. But yes, they are. They have higher. These are typal beings. That means they don't evolve unless they take birth. So these are typal regions of consciousness that Ashwapati is discovering. Each one, they're fixed in their orbit, fixed in their nature, fixed in their action and power. So now these beings, there are beings there. These are non-evolving beings. So, but it doesn't mean we don't know. It's not so fixed that they cannot evolve completely, but these are beings there, and they have a great impact on our mortal earth and mortal state. So this region borders on our mortal state. This wider world, our greater movements gives. So what is it? Because it's so close to us, it impacts our movements. So this wider world of the kingdom of the greater life, what is the greater life? Can you understand that? And can you give other names? Because of course Sri Aurobindo here is writing in English. But these equivalents are in the Vedas, in Sanskrit. So what is it? Yes, so this is this could be that also. The Gandharvas. And what is the Sanskrit word for the greater life? Of course, we know it's a higher vital. So what is another? Is there another? But if there's any other, I don't know. But so this is the higher force of the vital. That is the more illumined, refined, higher vital force, the prana shakti, you could call it. But this is from that plane. So the Gandharvas lived in that plane. That is true. Those beings that were typal beings, they are also not too far away from us. Okay, so what happens to this world? These are the kinsmen of our earthly race. This region borders on our mortal state. This wider world our greater movements gives. Its strong formations build our growing selves. Its creatures are our brighter replicas. Complete the types we only initiate, and are securely what we strive to be. Have you heard of the word avatar? Nowadays it's very common in AI. So this is exactly what this is. These are avatars, but not the avatar in the way we talk about that, but these are kind of brighter replicas of ourselves. We create our avatars, and now our avatars move around and have in the subtle, in these spheres. I hope you know what's happening with games and the whole world. All the younger generation is very busy. They don't want to live themselves. They want to create an avatar of themselves. That avatar is living around. In fact, they even have full art collections, which are not physical art collections. They're all digital art collections. So they have, you have a physical museum full of art. They have their own things. So if you enter into that world, see, everything that exists on earth comes from some higher plane. It can't just appear suddenly. So the more and more you read, you see this. Have any of you seen this film, The Avatar? So you'll see what happened there also. Now, so these beings are they are greater replicas of ourselves. And they move in this very, very non-physical, subtle physical world. Exactly the way we are trying to create through artificial intelligence. So even on your phone, all of you can make your own avatar, and that avatar is moving around. You can dress it up, you can make its own thing. So this is where this comes from. So we have our origin of our greater self lives in this world. Okay? So let's continue. Its creatures are our brighter replicas. Complete the types we only initiate, and are securely what we strive to be. As if thought out eternal characters, entire, not pulled, as we, by contrary tides. They follow the unseen leader in the heart. Their lives obey the inner nature's law. There is kept grandeur's store, the hero's mold. The soul is the watchful builder of its fate. So, in a sense, this avatar, this greater self of ours that live in this world, they live in the subtle physical. Each of us, now I'm coming to the truth of what the mother has said. She said that each of us have a higher self and being that live in this world. It's the true us. And some of us have seen that self. You may have seen in dream a much taller self of yours, much, much more refined, and that self of each of us lives in this world. So in a sense, what is happening with the younger generation is not all that unconscious. They have picked up this truth. And life is trying to create these things, because sooner or later, as we go on, somebody or the other will. This kind of thing gives you a lot of plasticity and ability to create a new being. When you realize that you are not who you are, that you can create a new avatar of yourself, and that your greater being resides in a higher world, and that you have the possibility to bring that greater consciousness into your own mind and your own body and into your own self, then your whole way of looking at life and looking at yourself changes. And that is what these cantos are about. Why has Sri Aurobindo spent pages and pages and pages describing this traveling, just, what he says, the inner kingdoms of consciousness? The reason is to allow us, give us this ability to have the freedom and knowledge that things are not as static as they appear to be. Life is not what it appears to be. That there is a veil, there is a screen behind which something greater exists. And that greater existence is also in us and for us. So here, if you read this again, with this freedom that it gives you, to be able to explore your greater avatar and to be able to bring that greater avatar into your life. So for example, there was a time in the ashram when the mother had opened the overmind consciousness and was trying to bring down the overmental force. And at that time, there were certain ashramites who were able to bring down certain gods into their selves, like Varuna, Nalinida. Several had got very high overmental experiences, and certain Godheads, what you call as Devatas, incarnated in them. Now, these things can only happen because you have that occult knowledge and that ability to know that it's possible. If you don't know it's possible, then you can't do it. Of course, the other side is also true, that there were these asuric beings, hostile beings that entered into certain people, notably Hitler, who got all his inspiration from this very great being, the Lord of Falsehood. So when you open yourself, you have to be very vigilant. Who are you allowing to enter? That's why we are closed up. Because we were too porous, we would not be able to create an individuality and be able to choose. So first the mother said, you have to first become an individual. Your character has to form. Then after the character is fully formed, and then you become an individual and then after that you can give yourself, and you can then aspire for a greater consciousness to inhabit or to enter you. So there's just no end to Savitri. I don't know where to start and end. But it is fathomless. Its creatures are our brighter replicas, complete the type we only initiate, and are securely what we strive to be. As if thought out eternal characters, entire, not pulled as we by contrary tides. They follow the unseen leader in the heart. Their lives obey the inner nature's law, which our lives do not. There is kept grandeur store, the hero's mold. The soul is the watchful builder of its fate. None is a spirit indifferent and inert. They choose their side, they see the God they adore. A battle is joined between the true and false. A pilgrimage sets out to the divine light. For even ignorance there aspires to know and shines with the luster of a distant star. There is a knowledge in the heart of sleep, and nature comes to them as a conscious force. An ideal is their leader and their king. Aspiring to the monarchy of the sun, they call in truth for their high government, hold her incarnate in their daily acts, and fill their thoughts with her inspired voice, and shape their lives into her breathing form, till in her sun-gold Godhead they too share, or to the truth of darkness they subscribe. So this or to the truth of darkness, now these are just the two things we spoke about. This is what these beings in this world and this have a complete freedom to do, or To the truth of darkness they subscribe. Whether for heaven or hell, they must wage war, whichever way. Whether for heaven or hell, they must wage war. Warriors of good, they serve a shining cause, or are evil soldiers in the pay of sin. For evil and good, an equal tenure keep. Wherever knowledge is, ignorance's twin. All powers of life towards their Godhead tend. So all the powers of life towards their Godhead tend. So all powers, whether powers of darkness and powers of truth or light, they tend towards their Godhead, their absolute. What is Godhead? Godhead is their absolute. This is another word for the absolute. Wherever knowledge is, ignorance's twin. So wherever knowledge is ignorance's twin, all powers of life towards their Godhead tend. In the wideness and the daring of that air, each builds its temple and expands its cult. And sin too there is a divinity. Please note, and sin too there is a divinity. Affirming the beauty and splendor of her law, she claims life as her natural domain, assumes the world's throne, or dons the papal robe. Her worshippers proclaim her sacred right. A red tiaraed falsehood they revere, worship the shadow of a crooked god, admit the black idea that twists the brain, or lie with the harlot power that slays the soul. So that's why this domain is so close to the mortal life and mortal earth. Yeah, it is clear? This plane actually has this, each of us have our avatar in this plane. This is where we are higher self. But what that plane does, even there's a choice. But Ashwapati discovers the choice towards the Godhead of the truth and good, or the Godhead, that too is a divinity, sin too is divine. The Godhead of the darkness, falsehood, which also have great powers, what we call as titans, or we call as asuras. Like Ravan, he was a great god. People worship him. So these are also Godheads. But they have an opposite karmic role. So wherever knowledge is, ignorance is twin. A red, tiaraed falsehood they revere, worship the shadow of a crooked god, admit the black idea that twists the brain, or lie with the harlot power that slays the soul. A mastering virtue, statues, the pose, a mastering virtue, or a titan passion goads to a proud unrest. At wisdom's altar they are kings and priests, or their life a sacrifice to an idol of power, or beauty shines on them like a wandering star. Too far to reach, passionate they follow her light, in art and life they catch the all-beautiful's ray, and make the world their radiant treasure house. Even common figures are with marvel robed, a charm and greatness locked in every hour. Awakes the joy which sleeps in all things made. A mighty victory or a mighty fall, a throne in heaven or a pit in hell, the dual energy they have justified and marked their souls with her tremendous seal. Whatever fate may do to them, they have earned. Something they have done, something they have been, they live. Their matter is soul's result and not its cause. In a contrary balance to earth's truth of things, the gross weighs less, the subtle counts for more. So in a contrary, very important truth, in a contrary balance, unlike here, the matter is much more, is heavier, weighs more, is more substantial, is more real, is more powerful on earth. It It has, here in this realm, what happens? There, matter is soul's result and not its cause. In a contrary balance to earth's truth of things, the gross weighs less, the subtle counts for more. On inner values hangs the outer plan. As quivers with the thought the expressive word, as yearns the act with the passion of the soul, this world's apparent sensible design looks vibrant back to some interior might, as yearns the act with the passion of the soul. But the interesting thing here is that the mother had said that as we continue in consciousness, the next step, and it would be here for beings, clairaudience, clairvoyance, one would not need telepathy. These are powers that would certainly become quite normal to human consciousness and humanity. Just like 20 or 40 years ago, one could not have thought of a mobile replacing the physical instrument of the telephone. So these subtler means, now you would say, but how would the electricity run? How would the signals go? But here they are going through air. In the same way, telepathy, clairvoyance, clairaudience, listening, all these things that is being described here, because this plane is so close to the human, this is the next stage. And many, many people on earth already have these powers. So it's quite interesting to read this, because these are possibilities that are not so miraculous. They can easily be attained. So, in a contrary balance to earth's truth of things, the gross weighs less, the subtle counts for more. On inner values hangs the outer plan. So there is where a reference to which plane? Yeah, the plane of the greater life and the Godheads of the greater life. So in this kingdom, the gross weighs less, the subtle counts for more. On inner values hangs the outer plan. As quivers with the thought the expressive word, as yearns the act with the passion of the soul, this world's apparent sensible design looks vibrant back to some interior might. A mind not limited by external sense gave figures to the spirit's imponderables, the world's impacts without channels registered and turned into the body's concrete thrill, the vivid workings of a bodiless force, bars here, subliminal, that act unseen, or in ambush crouch, waiting behind the wall, came out in front, uncovering their face. The occult grew there overt, the obvious kept a covert turn, and shouldered the unknown. The unseen was felt, and jostled visible shapes. In the communion of two meeting minds, thought looked at thought and had no need of speech. So in this plane of the higher and greater life, thought looked at thought and had no need of speech. One did not need to speak to be understood. One could communicate through telepathy. It's called telepathy. Okay? And so all of this is what, and this plane, as Sri Aurobindo has said, is extremely close, right, adjoining the mortal kingdom, the earthly plane. So the influences from this plane come very close on to earth. And therefore, you have these incidences even on earth of human beings who have these powers of telepathy, of, clairaudience, to hear from afar, smell from afar, see from afar. And all these visions, these senses of the 12 senses, what Mother speaks of, the other 6 senses, which are not developed in the ordinary human nature and human beings, can be developed very easily if one knows how to do so and has the practice of it and believes in it. Then you see that these senses open up in you. If you're in touch with these higher forces and in touch with this plane, you can certainly have these powers. And of course, and the Mother has said in the agenda too, that it will not be very long when the whole of the earth, all human beings will have telepathy, clairaudience, vision and so on. This is only the next step. So it's going to be pretty soon that that's going to happen too. And you can already see that in various movies that often depict things that are to come. So here we are, the vivid workings of a bodiless force, powers here subliminal that act unseen, or an ambush crouch waiting behind the wall, came out in front uncovering their face. The occult grew there overt, the obvious kept, a covert turn and shouldered the unknown. The unseen was felt in jostled visible shapes. In the communion of 2 meeting minds, thought looked at thought and had no need of speech. Emotion clasped emotion into heart. So not only thought, but emotion clasped emotion into hearts. They felt each other's thrill in the flesh and nerves, or melted each in each and grew immense. As when 2 houses burn and fire joins fire, hate grappled hate, and love broke in on love. Will wrestled with will on mind's invisible ground. Others' sensations passing through like waves left quivering the subtle body's frame. So one could feel others' sensation pass through one's own body, left quivering the subtle body's frame. Their anger rushed, galloping in brute attack. So one could even experience the anger of others, the hate of others, the love of others, all emotions could be directly grasped without any words, without any contact, without any speech. Their anger rushed, galloping in brute attack, a charge of trampling hooves on shaken soil. The shaken soil here is a reference to the subtle body's shaken soil. Left quivering the subtle body's frame, their anger rushed, galloping in brute attack, a charge of trampling hoofs on shaken soil. One felt another's grief invade the breast. Now you can understand what Sri Aurobindo and the Mother's consciousness were like at that time. One felt another's grief invade the breast. Everybody's grief, 1,000 wounds. His heart was stabbed like, there are these words in Savitri which you hear and you wonder why. During the World War, when Sri Aurobindo was moving around and the Mother was moving around every night in their subtle bodies, they would witness and experience the deep grief and anguish and pain of all those that were suffering in millions. So this becomes now a common thing for us. We can feel another one's grief invade our breast. These are now going to become, in coming future, what we thought were miracles. The mobile when it first came, television, all these, we will become like televisions. We will be able to televise anything, anywhere. See anything without the need. Televisions will become defunct. we will have to throw them into the garbage, like we threw our phones into the garbage. You understand? Try and understand what I'm trying to say. You have to have that deep faith in yourselves. If you don't get that faith, you will not be able to be the pioneers of this. You can all have these visions. You can all have these powers now, today. But for that, you require a certain deeper understanding. So, one felt another's grief invade the breast. Another's joy, exulting, ran through the blood. Hearts could draw close, through distance. Voices near that spoke upon the shore of alien seas. There beat a throb of living interchange. So one could be across the seas, far away, and have this living interchange. And hearts could draw close through distance. Voices near that spoke upon the shore of alien seas. There beat a throb of living interchange. Being felt being, even when afar. And consciousness replied to consciousness. And yet, the ultimate oneness was not there. So this is the limitation of this plane. These powers were there, but that ultimate sense of oneness is not there in this plane of the greater life. Because for that you require the oneness of the soul, the identity, which can only come through realizing one's psychic being, which of course is not what is in this plane. So, and consciousness replied to consciousness. And yet, the ultimate oneness was not there. There was a separateness of soul from soul. The separateness is caused by the ego. There was a separateness of soul from soul. An inner wall of silence could be built. An armor of conscious might protect and shield. The being could be closed in and solitary. One could remain apart in self, alone. Identity was not yet, nor union's peace. All was imperfect still, half known, half done. The miracle of inconscience was overpast. So here, the miracle of inconscience overpast, the miracle of the superconscient, still unknown, self-wrapped, unfelt, unknowable. Look down on them. What looked down on them? The miracle of the superconscious, unknown, self-wrapped, unfelt, unknowable, looked down on them, on this plane, on these beings, origin of all they were. This was the origin of what they were. As forms, like it looks down on us, the origin of who all we are. As forms they came of the formless infinite. As names lived of a nameless eternity. The beginning and the end were there occult. A middle term worked, unexplained, abrupt. They were words that spoke to a vast wordless truth. They were figures crowding an unfinished sum. None truly knew himself or knew the world or the reality living there enshrined. Only they knew what mind could take and build out of the secret supermind's huge store. A darkness under them, a bright void above. Uncertain they lived in a great climbing space. By mysteries they explained a mystery. A riddling answer met the riddle of things. So none, very important, none truly knew himself or knew the world in this plane of even though this was the plane of the greater life. Yet this was the limitation. Only they knew what mind could take and build out of the secret supermind's huge store. Please note the words. Mind and supermind. Only they knew what mind could take and build out of the secret supermind huge store, a darkness under them, a bright void above. Uncertain they lived in a great climbing space. By mysteries they explained a mystery. A riddling answer met the riddle of things. As he moved in this ether of ambiguous life, himself was soon a riddle to himself. As symbols he saw all and sought their sense. Across the leaping springs of death and birth, wonderful lines, across the leaping springs of death and birth, and over shifting borders of soul change, a hunter on the spirit's creative track, he followed in life's fine and mighty trails. So he followed Ashwapati followed, a hunter on the spirit's creative track. He followed in life's fine and mighty trails, pursuing her. Pursuing who? Life. Pursuing her sealed formidable delight in a perilous adventure without close. So this is, of course, the next thing. He continues, and this is the description of the next kingdom that he enters. So it's called kingdoms and Godheads. So it's not just one Godhead or one kingdom. At first, no aim appeared in those large steps. Only the wide source he saw of all things here, looking towards a wider source beyond. For as she drew away from earthly lines, a tenser drag was felt from the unknown. A higher context of delivering thought drove her towards marvel and discovery. There came a high release from pettier cares, a mightier image of desire and hope, a vaster formula, a greater scene. Ever she circled towards some far-off light. Her signs still covered more than they revealed, but tied to some immediate sight and will, they lost their purport in the joy of use, till stripped of their infinite meaning they became a cipher gleaming with unreal sense. Armed with a magical and haunted bow, she aimed at a target kept invisible, and ever deemed remote though always near, as one who spells illumined characters, the keybook of a crabbed magician text. He scanned her subtle, tangled, weird designs, and the screened, difficult theorem of her clues, traced in the monstrous sands of desert time, the thread beginnings of her Titan works, watched her charade of action for some hint, read the no gestures of her silhouettes, and strove to capture in their burdened drift the dance fantasia of her sequences, escaping into rhythmic mastery, a glimmer of fugitive feet on fleeing soil. So we start this paragraph with Ashwapati pursuing this, nature or life in its higher dimension, in the greater life, in the larger vital world. And he sees that in this world, in this kingdom, the word she is this greater life. She circled towards some far-off light, a vaster formula, a greater scene. So unlike the lower life, this higher life has a different sense, a different dimension to it. And Ashwapati here is discovering nature in this particular domain of the greater life. So the thread beginnings of her Titan works, watched her charade of action for some hint, read the no gestures of her silhouettes, and strove to capture in their burdened drift the dance fantasia of her sequences, escaping into rhythmic mystery. A glimmer of fugitive feet on fleeing soil, in the labyrinth pattern of her thoughts and hopes, and the byways of her intimate desires, in the complex corners crowded with her dreams, and rounds crossed by an intrigue of irrelevant rounds, a wanderer straying amid fugitive scenes. He lost its signs and chased each failing guess. Ever he met keywords, ignorant of their key, a sun that dazzled its own eye of sight, a luminous enigma's brilliant hood lit the dense purple barrier of thought's sky. A dim, large trance showed to the night her stars, as if sitting near an open window's gap, he read by lightning flash on crowding flash chapters of a metaphysical romance, of the soul's search for lost reality, and her fictions drawn from spirit's authentic fact, her caprices and conceits and meanings locked, her rash, unseizable freaks and mysteried turns, the magnificent wrappings of her secrecy that fold her desirable body out of sight, the strange, significant forms woven on her robe, her meaningful outlines of the souls of things he saw, her false transparencies of thought hue, her rich brocades with imaged fancies sewn, and mutable masks and broideries of disguise, 1,000 baffling faces of the truth, looked at him from her forms with unknown eyes, and wordless mouths unrecognizable spoke from the figures of her masquerade, or peered from the recondite magnificence and subtle splendor of her draperies, in sudden scintillations of the unknown. Inexpressive sounds became veridical, ideas that seemed unmeaning flashed out truths, voices that came from unseen, waiting worlds, uttered the syllables of the unmanifest to clothe the body of the mystic word, and wizard diagrams of the occult law sealed some precise, unreadable harmony, or used hue and figure to reconstitute the herald blazon of time's secret things. In her green wildernesses and lurking depths, in her thickets of joy, where danger clasps delight, he glimpsed the hidden wings of her songster hopes, a glimmer of blue and gold and scarlet fire, in her covert lanes, bordering her chance-field paths, and by her singing rivulets and calm lakes, he found the glow of her golden fruits of bliss, and the beauty of her flowers of dream and muse. As if a miracle of hearts changed by joy, he watched in the alchemist's radiance of her suns the crimson outburst of one secular flower on the tree of sacrifice of spiritual love. In the sleepy splendor of her noons he saw. So he's seeing all this is in nature's breast, Wonderful description of the higher nature of Prakriti, of nature in her fullness, in her total vital breath. So this is a certain largesse that he sees here. This nature also is very close, this world is very close to ours. So therefore there's a lot of parallels, a lot of things we can easily recognize. In her covert lanes, bordering her chance-field paths, and by her singing rivulets and calm lakes, he found the glow of her golden fruits of bliss, and the beauty of her flowers of dream and muse. As if a miracle of hearts changed by joy, he watched in the alchemist radiance of her suns, the crimson outburst of one secular flower on the tree of sacrifice, of spiritual love. In the sleepy splendor of her noons he saw a perpetual repetition through the hours. Thoughts dance of dragonflies on mystery stream that skim but never test its murmurs race, and heard the laughter of her rose desires running as if to escape from longed-for hands, jingling sweet anklet bells of fantasy. Amidst life symbols of her occult power, he moved and felt them as close real forms, in that life more concrete than the lives of men, throbbed heartbeats of the hidden reality. Embodied was there what we but think and feel, self-framed, what here takes outward borrowed shapes, a comrade of silence on her austere heights, accepted by her mighty loneliness. He stood with her on meditating peaks, where life and being are a sacrament offered to the reality beyond, and saw her lose into infinity her hooded eagles of significance, messengers of thought to the unknowable, identified in soul vision and soul sense, entering into her depths as into a house, all he became that she was or longed to be. He thought with her thoughts and journeyed with her steps, lived with her breath and scanned all with her eyes, that so he might learn the secret of her soul, a witness overmastered by his scene. He admired her splendid front of pomp and play, and the marvels of her rich and delicate craft, and thrilled to the insistence of her cry. Impassioned, he bore the sorceries of her might, felt laid on him her abrupt, mysterious will, her hands that need fate in their violent grasp, her touch that moves, her powers that seize and drive. But this too he saw, her soul that wept within, her seekings vain that clutch at fleeing truth, her hopes whose somber gaze mates with despair, the passion that possessed her longing limbs, the trouble and rapture of her yearning breasts, her mind that toils unsatisfied with its fruits, her heart that captures not the one beloved. Always he met a veiled and seeking force, an exiled goddess, building mimic heavens, a sphinx whose eyes look up to a hidden sun. So this is the nature, the higher nature, the Godhead. And he sees and becomes one with her, but he also sees whatever she is outwardly, her soul within is weeping and is yearning for the one beloved whom she is not able to meet and to identify with. Ever he felt near a spirit in her forms. Its passive presence was her nature's strength. This soul is real in apparent things. So ever he felt near a spirit in her forms. In whose forms? in life's forms, in nature's form, in Prakriti's forms. So he felt a spirit in her forms. Its passive presence was her nature's strength. This passive presence of the spirit was what gave a life her strength, was her nature's strength. This soul is real in apparent things. And actually, if you look at it, this spirit is actually what is real in apparent things. The rest is just an illusion, or rather something that is fugitive. But this is what makes all things real. This soul is real in apparent things. Even upon earth, the spirit is life's key. So it's not only on this plane of the kingdoms of the greater life that the spirit is the key, but even on earth, the key to life is the spirit. Without the spirit, life does not have its innate strength and purpose and life, so to speak. So it is the spirit that gives life the strength to exist and to endure and to persist. Even upon earth, the spirit is life's key. But her solid outsides nowhere bear its trace. But you can see from everything, you can't see the spirit anywhere because it is hidden and camouflaged. Neither can you see your own spirit. But her solid outsides nowhere bear its trace. Its stamp on her acts is undiscoverable. Its stamp, the spirit stamp on life's acts, all its movements is undiscoverable. A pathos of lost heights, its appeal. Only sometimes is caught a shadowy line that seems a hint of veiled reality. Life stared at him with vague, confused outlines, offering a picture the eyes could not keep, a story that was yet not written there. So sometimes a shadowy line that gives a hint of the veiled reality of the spirit is seen. And then Ashwapati continues, life stared at him with vague, confused outlines, offering a picture the eyes could not keep, a story that was yet not written there. As in a fragmentary, half-lost design, life's meanings fled from the pursuing eye. Life's visage hides life's real self from sight. Life's visage means form. The outsides, the whole of life, it hides life's real self from sight. Life's secret sense is written within, above. The thought that gives it sense lives far beyond. It is not seen in its half-finished design. In vain we hope to read the baffling signs or find the word of the half-played charade. Only in that greater life a cryptic thought is found, is hinted some interpreting word that makes the earth myth a tale intelligible. So only in this greater life, that in this Godhead or this kingdom of the greater life, is found some cryptic, is hinted some interpreting word, a cryptic thought that makes the earth myth a tale intelligible. Something was seen at last that looked like truth. In a half-lit air of hazardous mystery, the eye that looks at the dark half of truth made out an image mid a vivid blur, and peering through a mist of subtle tints, he saw a half-blind, chained divinity bewildered by the world in which he moved. So, In a half-lit air of hazardous mystery, the eye that looks at the dark half of truth made out an image mid a vivid blur, and peering through a mist of subtle tints, he saw a half-blind, chained divinity, bewildered by the world in which he moved, yet conscious of some light prompting his soul. Attracted to strange, far-off shimmerings, led by the fluting of a distant player, he sought his way amid life's laughter and call, and the index chaos of her myriad steps toward some total deep infinitude. Around crowded the forest of her signs. At hazard he read, by arrow leaps of thought, that hit the mark by guess or luminous chance, her changing colored road lights of idea, and her signals of uncertain swift event, the hieroglyphs of her symbol pageantries, and her landmarks in the tangled paths of time. So, Ashwapati saw a half-blind chained divinity which was bewildered by the world in which he moved, and so on. At hazard he read by arrow leaps of thought that hit the mark by guess or luminous chance, her changing colored road lights of idea, and her signals of uncertain swift event, the hieroglyphs of her symbol pageantries, and her landmarks in the tangled paths of time. In her mazes of approach and of retreat, to every side she draws him and repels, but drawn too near escapes from his embrace. Always she leads him, but no way is sure. Allured by the many-toned marvel of her chant, attracted by the witchcraft of her moods, and moved by her casual touch to joy and grief, he loses himself in her, but wins her not. A fugitive paradise smiles at him from her eyes. He dreams of her beauty made forever his. He dreams of his mastery, her limbs shall bear. He dreams of the magic of her breasts of bliss. In her illumined script, her fanciful translation of God's pure original text, he thinks to read the scripture wonderful, hieratic key to unknown beatitudes. But the word of life is hidden in its script. The chant of life has lost its divine note. So who is this he that is referring to? Always she leads him, but nowhere is sure. Allured by the many-toned marvel of her chant. This he is referring to who? Which he? Not Ashwapati. No. So who is this? So this is this being that he sees there. He sees, Ashwapati sees, he is Ashwapati. He saw a half-blind chained divinity bewildered by the world in which he moved, and yet conscious of some light prompting his soul. This half-blind chained divinity is what is described. And how this chained, half-blind chained divinity, it's a divinity of life, that is, that he sees in this realm of the greater life, in this kingdom of subtle, the subtle world. And this is when he sees, but drawn too near escapes from his embrace. Always she leads him, but nowhere is sure. And this is then what happens to this half-blind divinity, that is chained to life, and how life is leading this half-blind divinity. This is the whole description we're reading. Okay? He thinks to read the scripture wonderful, hieratic key to unknown beatitudes. But the word of life is hidden in its script. The chant of life has lost its divine note. Unseen, a captive in a house of sound, the spirit lost in the splendor of a dream, listens to 1,000 voiced illusion's ode, a delicate weft of sorcery, steals the heart, or a fiery magic tints her tones and hues. Yet they but wake a thrill of transient grace, a vagrant march struck by the wanderer time. They call to a brief, unsatisfied delight, or wallow in ravishments of mind and sense, but miss the luminous answer of the soul. So this spirit lost in the splendor of a dream, the spirit lost in the splendor of a dream, listens to illusion's ode, and yet they but wake a thrill of transient grace, and so on. They call to a brief, unsatisfied delight, but miss the luminous answer of the soul. A blind heart throb that reaches joy through tears, a yearning towards peaks forever unreached, an ecstasy of unfulfilled desire. Track the last heavenward climbings of her voice, transmuted our past sufferings' memories into an old sadness's sweet escaping trail. Turned are her tears to gems of diamond pain, her sorrow into a magic crown of song. Brief are her snatches of felicity that touch the surface, then escape or die. A lost remembrance echoes in her depths. A deathless longing is hers, a veiled self's call, a prisoner in the mortal's limiting world, a spirit wounded by life sobs in her breast. A cherished suffering is her deepest cry. A wanderer on forlorn, despairing routes, along the roads of sound, a frustrate voice, forsaken cries to a forgotten bliss. Astray in the echo caverns of desire, it guards the phantoms of a soul's dead hopes, and keeps alive the voice of perished things, or lingers upon sweet and errant notes, hunting for pleasure in the heart of pain. A fateful hand has touched the cosmic chords. This is a bit dense. It's not so easy to immediately understand, but I don't want to push a meaning into it. I want them, like Mother said, let the grey rooms of our brain cells take in this golden light, and it will create a meaning. By the next time you hear it, suddenly everything will become absolutely clear. So that's the way Savitri is to be read and understood. So we read last time on page 193 about how the divine is hidden, unseen in life, but one cannot feel the divine presence. It's camouflage, it's behind, but it is what makes life so alluring, so wonderful, so divine, and so much, there's such an attraction towards the life force and towards the higher and towards life because of the divine's presence in life. So here Ashwapati in this particular canto is discovering the different kingdoms and planes of the greater life, which is basically the larger vital, the higher vital or the vital proper, and also meets the Godheads that govern this greater life. As we saw last time in the previous canto, kingdoms and Godheads of the little life, we saw that, in how close it was adjoining to the world of the earth. Similarly, this world is also very close to our earthly life and influences our earthly life in ways that are unseen and unknown to us. So, a fateful hand has touched the cosmic chords, and the intrusion of a troubled strain covers the inner music's hidden key that guides unheard the surface cadences. Yet is it joy to live and to create, and joy to love and labor though all fails, and joy to seek though all we find deceives, and all on which we lean betrays our trust. Yet something in its depths was worth the pain. A passionate memory haunts with ecstasy's fire. Even grief is joy hidden beneath its roots. For nothing is truly vain the one has made. In our defeated hearts, God's strength survives, and victory's star still lights our desperate road. Our death is made a passage to new worlds. This to life's music gives its anthem swell. So our death is made a passage to new worlds. This to life's music gives its anthem swell. To all she lends the glory of her voice. Heaven's raptures whisper to her heart and pass. Earth's transient yearnings cry from her lips and fade. So to all she lends the glory of her voice. Who lends the glory of her voice? Life, the life force, the greater life, the Godheads of the life, both to heaven and to earth. So to the kingdoms above and to the kingdoms below. Earth's transient yearnings cry from her lips and fade. Alone the God-given hymn escapes her art that came with her from her spiritual home, but stopped halfway and failed, a silent word, awake in some deep pause of waiting worlds, a murmur suspended in eternity's hush, but no breath comes from the supernal peace. A sumptuous interlude occupies the ear, and the heart listens, and the soul consents. An evanescent music it repeats, wasting on transience time's eternity. So alone the God-given hymn escapes her art. So alone the God-given hymn that has been given to life escapes her art that came with her from her spiritual home. When life and the life force enters into the earth and the earth atmosphere, this God-given hymn that came from her spiritual home escapes but stopped halfway and failed. So this God-given hymn then stops halfway and fails, a silent word. And that's why, awake in some deep pause of waiting worlds, a murmur suspended in eternity's hush, but no breath comes from the supernal peace. A sumptuous interlude occupies the ear, and the heart listens and the soul consents. An evanescent music it repeats, wasting on transience, time's eternity. A tremolo of the voices of the hours, oblivious screens the high intended theme. The self-embodying spirit came to play on the vast clavichord of nature force. Clavichord is a music, it's a particular chord that's used in composition. Only a mighty murmur here and there of the eternal word, the blissful voice, or beauty's touch, transfiguring heart and sense, a wandering splendor and a mystic cry, recalls the strength and sweetness heard no more. Here is the gap. Here stops or sinks life's force. This deficit paupers the magician's skill. Which deficit? Here is the gap. Here stops or sinks life's force. So because of this gap between the gap from where its original home, where the divine is in front and is actually pervading life, but when the life force enters into human on the earthly plane, which is the lower hemisphere, there is an in-between pause where the higher, the higher divine presence stays there, screens, but no breath comes from the supernal peace. A murmur suspended in eternity's hush, but stopped halfway and faded, a silent word awake in some deep pause of waiting worlds. And this is the gap that Ashwapati sees in the life force. The original life force is divine. The original life force does not have the impediments that the life force has when it enters the earth atmosphere. And somehow he says that there is a gap between the two. And here is the gap. Here stops or sinks life's force. This deficit paupers the magician's skill. This want makes all the rest seem thin and bare. The half-sight draws the horizon of her acts. Her depths remember what she came to do. Her depths remember, the Godhead of the life, that remembers what she came to do, but the mind has forgotten or the heart mistakes. In nature's endless lines is lost the God. So lost the Godhead of the greater life. So earth here, if you read this again, alone the God-given hymn escapes her art, that came with her from her spiritual home, but stopped halfway and failed, a silent word awake in some deep pause of waiting worlds, a murmur suspended, and so on. A sumptuous interlude occupies the ear, and the heart listens and the soul consents, but an evanescent music it repeats, wasting on transience, time's eternity, a tremolo of the voices of the hours. Now these are all tremolo and clavichord, these are all beautiful musical ways that he is using to describe what happens to the life force, a tremolo of the voices of the hours. So what does tremolo mean? Anyone knows? Yeah, it's an in-between note. A tremolo is a trembling note, but which comes only for a moment and then disappears. So you see it for a moment and it disappears. So a tremolo of the voices of the hours. You get a sense of that. And oblivious screens the high intended theme. The self-embodying spirit came to play on the vast clavichord of nature force. So here the instrument is the nature force. On the vast clavichord, what is clavichord? We saw last time. What did we say? Is a clavichord? It's a string, yeah. It's one of the instruments that you play. So who is the clavichord here? Nature force. And what is playing on this instrument? A self-embodying spirit is playing on the vast clavichord of nature force. Only a mighty murmur here and there of the eternal word, the blissful voice, or beauty's touch, transfiguring heart and sense, a wandering splendor and a mystic cry, recalls the strength and sweetness heard no more. Here is the gap. Here stops or sinks life's force. This deficit paupers the magician's skill. This want makes all the rest seem thin and bare. A half-sight draws the horizon of her acts. Her depths remember what she came to do, but the mind has forgotten or the heart mistakes. In nature's endless lines is lost the God. In knowledge, to sum up, omniscience. In action, to erect the omnipotent. So this is what has been lost. Godhead has been lost in nature's endless line. And what is this Godhead? In knowledge, to sum up, omniscience. In action, to erect the omnipotent. So to create her creator here was her heart's conceit, to invade the cosmic scene with utter God, toiling to transform the still far absolute into an all-fulfilling epiphany, into an utterance of the ineffable. She would bring the glory here of the Absolute's force. Change poise into creation's rhythmic swing, marry with a sky of calm, a sea of bliss. a fire to call eternity into time, make bodies' joy as vivid as the soul's. So this is the mission of the Godhead of the greater life, to bring this on earth, into earthly life. However, she, because of this gap that exists, where there is a deficit and she is paupered in a sense and unable to bring her full Godhead down on earth, she cannot do this completely. But here is the vision of what she has within her and the power to do. So, as Sri Aurobindo always says, you can only what is involved can evolve. So unless life has in itself involved in its very depths the superconscient, the omnipotent, the omniscient, the omnipresent, the ineffable, the supreme, involved in her depths, she cannot evolve that. But here Sri Aurobindo sees through Ashwapati in this kingdom that in fact God, the Godhead of life, of the greater life, has this divine omnipotence which she is unable to bring down in its fullness into the earth nature. So there is a distinction between her plane where she is and the earth nature is trying to manifest but unable to do so. So in nature's endless lines is lost the God. In knowledge to sum up omniscience, and this is what is lost. In action to erect the omnipotent. To create her creator here was her heart's conceit. To invade the cosmic scene with utter God. This is what she is unable to do. Toiling to transform the still far absolute into an all-fulfilling epiphany, into an utterance of the ineffable, she would bring the glory here of the absolute's force. That is her mission, to bring the glory here of the absolute's force. Change poise into creation's rhythmic swing. Marry with a sky of calm, a sea of bliss. A fire to call eternity into time. Make bodies' joy as vivid as the soul's. Earth she would lift to neighborhood with heaven. Labor's life to equate with the supreme. And reconcile the eternal and the abyss. Her pragmatism of the transcendent truth fills silence with the voices of the gods, but in the cry the single voice is lost. So her pragmatism of the transcendent truth fills silence with the voices of the gods. Please note, gods is in the small g. These are the various different powers of and Godheads. They are not the one supreme. Fill silence with the voices of the gods, but in the cry, the single voice with a capital V is lost. For nature's vision climbs beyond her acts. A life of gods and heavens she sees above. A demigod emerging from an ape is all she can in our mortal element. So here again, this is very important. For nature's vision climbs beyond her acts. A life of gods in heaven she sees above. So nature's vision, the vision of nature with a capital N, this is the higher nature. She sees, what does she see when she looks up? A life of gods in heaven she sees above. A demigod, a half-godhead, emerging from an ape. She sees from the ape, the demigod emerging, is all she can in our mortal element. So as long as our mortal element is capable of bringing forth the demigod. Here, the half-god, the half-titan are her peak. So half-god, half-titan are her peak. This greater life wavers twixt earth and sky. So this greater life is again back to the original title of the canto, This greater life wavers twixt between earth and sky, the higher hemispheres and the lower hemispheres. Earth is the lower hemisphere, and the sky or the heavens above are the higher hemisphere. So this greater life wavers twixt earth and sky. A poignant paradox pursues her dreams. Her hooded energy moves an ignorant world to look for a joy her own strong clasp puts off. In her embrace, it cannot turn to its source. Immense her power, endless her acts, vast drive. Astray is its significance and lost. Although she carries in her secret breast the law and journeying curve of all things born, her knowledge partial seems, her purpose small. On a soil of yearning, tread her sumptuous hours. A leaden nescience weighs the wings of thought. So thought is with a capital T. Her power oppresses the being with its garbs, her actions prison its immortal gaze. So, although this nature, this higher life, this greater life, carries in her secret breast the law and journeying curve of all things born, her knowledge partial seems, her purpose small, because when she is here, that is what we see of life. Her knowledge partial seems, her purpose small, on a soil of yearning. Why? Because a laden nescience weighs the wings of thought. There is a nescience in earth nature that does not allow the greater life and the higher parts of life to fully transform this earth life. Her power oppresses the being with its garbs. Her actions prison its immortal gaze. A sense of limit haunts her masteries, and nowhere is assured content or peace. For all the depth and beauty of her work, a wisdom lacks that sets the spirit free. An old and faded charm had now her face, and palled for him her quick and curious lure. His wide soul asked a deeper joy than hers. Out of her dear lines he sought escape. Who is this he? Ashwapati. He isn't traveling through these worlds. But neither gate of horn nor ivory he found, nor postern of spiritual sight. There was no issue from that dream-like space. Our being must move eternally through time. Death helps us not. Vain is the hope to seize. So here always you see in Savitri, in the way that Sri Aurobindo writes, there is always a pause in the narration where he makes generic statements of truth and of wisdom. So here again in this particular narration, after our being must move eternally through time, he says, death helps us not. Vain is the hope to seize. A secret will compels us to endure. Our life's repose is in the infinite. It cannot end. Its end is life supreme. So, death does not help us. Vain is the hope to seize after death. A secret will, because a secret will compels us to endure all of life and death. Our life's repose, ultimate repose, our life's repose is only in the infinite, not in the finite. It cannot end. Its end is life supreme. So its end is the supreme life, without death. Death is a passage, not the goal of our walk. Death is a passage, not the goal of our walk. Some ancient deep impulsion labors on. Our souls are dragged as with a hidden leash. So here you again get this wonderful narration and, nugget of deep, immense wisdom and truth. So here he says, our life's repose is in the infinite. It cannot end. Its end is life supreme. Death is a passage only, not the goal of our walk. And there is somehow an ancient, deep impulsion in us that labors on, continues on, refuses to give up. And our souls are dragged as with a hidden leash. It's almost like there is a hidden leash on our souls which just drags us on and on and on, from birth to death to life to birth to death. The cycle continues. Our souls are dragged as with a hidden leash, carried from birth to birth, from world to world. Our acts prolong after the bodies fall. Our acts prolong after the bodies fall. So even when the body, our physical body dies, so to speak, becomes one with the earth, our actions prolong. Now this is the whole, in one word, in one sentence, this is the whole law of karma, the karmic actions, what we call as karma. Why do we say that our actions continue? And what is this law of karmic? What is a karmic law? Here, Sri Aurobindo, in one sentence, explains that even though our life, first of all, life itself keeps moving on from birth to death to birth. Secondly, he says our soul continues even when the body falls. But when the body falls, our actions, the karmic residues of our action continue. They do not die with the body. Our acts prolong after the bodies fall. Act is a very simple word to denote something very, very vast and comprehensive. Our acts prolong after the bodies fall, the old perpetual journey without pause. So, no silent peak is found where time can rest. This was a magic stream that reached no sea. So this was this magic stream that reached no sea. So there is no place of rest where time can rest. But the soul has to continue from birth to birth. And therefore this magic stream of our consciousness reaches no sea. However far he went, wherever turned, the wheel of works ran with him and outstripped. Always a further task was left to do. So even if we want to pause, even in our own lives, you see, there is, we feel, oh, now we want to retire, now we want some time to do this or that. You see that something keeps goading us on, keeps pushing us. It's difficult to do that. Those who want to retire either go backwards. You can't stay in the same position. This wanting to stay time, to stay karma, to stay our lives, it does not exist. That there is a law that pushes us, that is a leash, a hidden leash that drags our souls. So you only have two choices. Either fall backwards or go forwards. If you fall backwards, you will fall into decay and dissolution. Therefore, sometimes the body needs to renew itself. Certain souls die when they feel, oh, I have nothing more to do on earth now. I've done what I have. Suddenly you find death takes them away. Illness, accidents, whatever it may be. And when you go deeper into the source of why this happens, there is something in the soul of that being that has decided or needs a fresh renewal. Because whatever it had come to do cannot do it anymore. But for us who are still in this path of yoga, you have to understand that Sri Aurobindo's yoga is such that it is very, very clear that you cannot stand still. In fact, for anybody. But in most outer life, people are so unconscious that they are not aware that there are no choices. In those who have taken up a conscious life, there is an understanding that we have no choice because our soul has decided, not the vital being. It is not our mind that has decided. So if you are not progressing, you are regressing, right? So what does that mean when you regress? So your body regresses into illness, the physical. The mind regresses. It doesn't develop as fast or the vital being regresses, and the active part in ourselves becomes more and more decadent. So this is a very great truth that he is now, Ashwapati is discovering when he goes into this kingdom and sees the Godhead of the greater life. Because the greater life is what is the higher life that, is a stream that runs through earth. So every time you feel tired, remind yourself that the only way to renew yourself is through is to go higher up in your consciousness. Through aspiration, through taking a step forward. So higher up in your consciousness could be through prayer, through meditation, through reading, through elevation of consciousness, through karma yoga. If you work in the right way, through as an offering to the divine, then the fatigue leaves you. If you work with the vital being, always for want, for fame, for name, for recognition, for monetary gain, for power, whatever it might be, there is a fatigue that sets in the being, or for the ego, basically. So there are two ways of working. One is you work for the ego, and we are not even conscious when we are doing that. And the other is you work for the divine in you, the divine being, the divine presence in the universe. So that is why Sri Aurobindo brought the integral yoga down with him and the mother. Because this is the key for the forward movement of the species, not just for you and me, for the whole human species, to move from its present half demigod, half ape state, half animal state, to the supramental. So however far he went, wherever turned, the wheel of works ran with him and outstripped. Always a further task was left to do, a beat of action and a cry of search forever grew in that unquiet world. A busy murmur filled the heart of time. All was contrivance and unceasing stir. 100 ways to live were tried in vain. A sameness that assumed 1,000 forms strove to escape from its long monotone and made new things that soon were like the old. A curious decoration lured the eye, and novel values furbished ancient themes to cheat the mind with the idea of change. A different picture that was still the same appeared upon the cosmic vague background, only another labyrinthine house of creatures and their doings and events, a city of the traffic of bound souls, a market of creation and her wares, was offered to the laboring mind and heart. A circuit ending where it first began is dubbed the forward and eternal march. So this so-called forward and eternal march is actually a circuit ending where it first began, of progress on perfection's unknown road. Each final scheme leads to a sequel plan, yet every new departure seems the last. Inspired evangel, theory's ultimate peak, proclaiming a panacea for all time's ills, or carrying thought in its ultimate zenith flight, and trumpeting supreme discovery. Each brief idea, a structure perishable, publishes the immortality of its rule, its claim to be the perfect form of things, truth's last epitome, time's golden best. But nothing has been achieved of infinite worth, a world made ever anew, never complete. piled always half attempts on lost attempts, and saw a fragment as the eternal whole. In the aimless mounting total of things done, existence seemed a vain necessity's act, a wrestle of eternal opposites, in a clasped antagonism's close, locked embrace, a play without denouncement or idea, a hunger march of lives without a goal, or, written on a bare blackboard of space, a futile and recurring sum of souls, a hope that failed, a light that never shone, the labor of an unaccomplished force tied to its axe in a dim eternity. There is no end, or none can yet be seen. Although defeated, life must struggle on. Always she sees a crown she cannot grasp. So there is no end, or none can yet be seen. Although defeated, although life gets defeated, she must struggle on. Always she sees a crown. How is life defeated? By death. But yet she must continue. Always she sees a crown she cannot grasp. Her eyes are fixed beyond her fallen state. There quivers still within her breast and ours a glory that was once and is no more, or there calls to us from some unfulfilled beyond a greatness yet unreached by the halting world. In a memory behind our mortal sense, a dream persists of larger, happier air, breathing around free hearts of joy and love, forgotten by us, immortal in lost time. So this dream that persists in all of us is what actually pushes us to feel, even though life is, and the world and everything around us is the opposite of what this dream is, yet we know deep within us that there is something that is a greater life, or a life that is immortal, or there is something that quivers within each breast, a glory that was once is no more. This glory of immortality, of infinite supreme life. In a memory behind our mortal sense, a dream persists of larger, happier air, breathing around free hearts of joy and love, forgotten by us, immortal in lost time. A ghost of bliss pursues her haunted depths, for she remembers still, though now so far, her realm of golden ease and glad desire, and the beauty and strength and happiness that were hers. In the sweetness of her glowing paradise, in a kingdom of immortal ecstasy, halfway between God's silence and the abyss. This knowledge in our hidden parts we keep, awake to a vague mystery's appeal. We meet a deep unseen reality, far truer than the world's face of present truth. So this knowledge we keep in our hidden parts. This knowledge we keep in our hidden parts, and we meet a deep unseen reality somewhere in that, far truer than the world's face of present truth. We are chased by a self we cannot now recall, and moved by a spirit we must still become, as one who has lost the kingdom of his soul. We look back to some God phase of our birth, other than this imperfect creature here, and hope in this or a diviner world to recover yet from heaven's patient guard what by our mind's forgetfulness we miss, our being's natural felicity, our heart's delight we have exchanged for grief, the body's thrill we bartered for mere pain, the bliss for which our mortal nature yearns, as yearns an obscure moth to blazing light. So, in this canto, Ashwapati discovers the secret of immortal life that is hidden in each one of us. And he discovers this in this plane of the kingdom of the Godheads of the greater life, where he realizes that beneath life, we hold a greater, deeper, supreme life that is waiting. And we are aware of its reality deep in our own hearts and deep within. And also, this reality is there in the heart of the universe, in the heart of nature, because there is some divine birth that we have forgotten. We have to bring back. For she remembers still, though now so far, her realm of golden ease and glad desire, in her kingdom of immortal ecstasy, halfway between God's silence and the abyss. This knowledge in our hidden parts we keep, and so on. Then we are chased by a self we cannot now recall, and moved by a spirit we must still become. As one who has lost the kingdom of his soul, we look back to some God phase of our birth in the history of the universe, some God phase of our birth, other than this imperfect creature here, and hope in this or a diviner world, to recover yet from heaven's patient guard what by our mind's forgetfulness we miss, our being's natural felicity. Our heart's delight we have exchanged for grief, the body's thrill we bartered for mere pain, the bliss for which our mortal nature yearns, as yearns an obscure moth to blazing light. Our life is a march to a victory never won. This wave of being longing for delight, this eager turmoil of unsatisfied strengths, these long, far files of forward striving hopes, lift worshipping eyes to the blue void called heaven, looking for the golden hand that never came. The advent for which all creation waits. What is this advent for which all creation waits? Golden hand of victory. This wave of being longing for delight and so on. Looking for the golden hand that never came. The advent for which all creation waits. The beautiful visage of eternity. So this golden hand is the beautiful image of eternity that shall appear upon the roads of time. Yet, still to ourselves we say, rekindling faith. So what do we say to ourselves? This is in quotation marks, open. Oh, surely one day he shall come to our cry. One day he shall create our life anew and utter the magic formula of peace and bring perfection to the scheme of things. So surely one day he shall come to our cry. This eternity, this golden hand, this supreme life, one day he shall create our life anew and utter the magic formula of peace and bring perfection to the scheme of things. One day he shall descend to life and earth, leaving the secrecy of the eternal doors into a world that cries to him for help and bring the truth that sets the spirit free, the joy that is the baptism of the soul, the strength that is the outstretched arm of love. So this is the hope and the vision that Ashwapati the whole of the earth, of humanity, of every being. It carries in deep within it, which Ashwapati discovers and realizes that this is why we have this. One day he shall descend to life on earth. And that is what makes pain, suffering, obscurity, ignorance, darkness bearable. If one did not have this in deep as a central truth in one's being, that this is going to happen, one would not be able to bear the travails of life. So, one day he shall descend to life and earth, leaving the secrecy of the eternal doors into a world that cries to him for help, and bring the truth that sets the spirit free, the joy that is the baptism of the soul, the strength that is the outstretched arm of love. One day he shall lift his beauty's dreadful veil, impose delight on the world's beating heart, and bear his secret body of light and bliss. But now we strain to reach an unknown goal. There is no end of seeking and of birth. There is no end of dying and return. But until then, we now, as far as time in the present epochs, all through the history of the earth and forward, until this happens, until he comes down and into the earth and changes and bears his secret body of light and bliss, there is no end of seeking and of birth. Till then, we have to continue with this cycle of seeking, straining, birth and rebirth. There is no end of dying and return. The life that wins its aim asks greater aims. The life that fails and dies must live again. Till it has found itself, it cannot cease. All must be done for which life and death were made. So this idea that we can escape from the travails of life and disappear into some unknown beyond is actually an illusion, or that by suicide or by drugs or by any other means one can escape. You have to keep coming till you become ready for the new life. Continues on. So, all must be done for which life and death were made. But who shall say that even then is rest, or there repose and action are the same, in the deep breast of God's supreme delight, in a high state where ignorance is no more, each movement is a wave of peace and bliss. Repose God's motionless, creative force, action a ripple in the infinite, and birth a gesture of eternity, a sun of transfiguration, still can shine, and night can bear its core of mystic light, the self-cancelling, self-afflicting paradox into a self-luminous mystery might change, the imbroglio into a joyful miracle. So here again he offers and asks this question, but who shall say what that even then is rest? Perhaps then action and repose become the same in a deep rest of God's supreme delight. And birth itself is a transfiguration, a gesture of eternity, an action, a ripple in the infinite. Repose God's motionless creative force. And night can bear its core of mystic light, the self-cancelling, self-afflicting paradox into a self-luminous mystery might change, the imbroglio into a joyful miracle. Then God could be visible here take a shape. Disclosed would be the Spirit's identity. Life would reveal her true immortal face. And then, he says, God would be visible on earth, disclose the spirit's identity rather than the body's identity or the ego's identity by which we are known now. Life would reveal her true immortal face. And unlike the mortality that life has to suffer now, life itself has to pass through death and rebirth, and life again cannot continue. Life would reveal her true immortal face. But now, a termless labor is her fate in its recurrent decimal of events. Birth, death are a ceaseless iterations points. But until that happens, where life reveals her true immortal face, birth, death are a ceaseless iterations points, and a termless labor is her fate. The old question mark margins each finished page, each volume of her efforts' history, a limping yes through the eons, journey still, accompanied by an eternal no. This particular line, in fact, Amal Kiran had asked Sri Aurobindo, "Oh, did you write this in my honor?" Because, Amal Kiran had a limp. So Sri Aurobindo laughed and smiled. "Did you take inspiration from me? Am I the limping yes?" Anyway, this was a letter between the two. He uses this here to describe a limping yes through the eons, journey still, accompanied by an eternal no. All seems in vain, yet endless game. Impassive turns the ever-circling wheel. Life has no issue, death brings no release. So all seems in vain, yet endless is the game. Impassive turns without any emotion, impassive turns the ever-circling wheel of life, death, rebirth, karma, circumstance, the wheel of works. Life has no issue. Death brings no release. A prisoner of itself, the being lives. The spirit, the being in each of us lives a prisoner of itself. A prisoner of itself, the being lives and keeps its futile immortality. Extinction is denied, its soul escapes. So the only escape, extinction, which is going into nothingness and nihil, is denied, its soul escape. An error of the gods has made the world, or indifferent, the eternal watches time. So is it that an error of the gods has made the world? It seems as though an error of the gods has made the world. Or indifferent, the eternal watches time, or the eternal is indifferent to what happens in time. End of Canto 6. Canto 7, of course, is Ashwapati's descent into night. So from this plane of greater life and this world of the Godheads of the greater life, he enters straight into night, the inconscience. These cantos, why has Sri Aurobindo taken so much trouble to write each of these cantos? What was the need for him to describe these in such detail? The greater life, the little life, all the little mind, the greater mind. There is obviously a very important need and a very important reason that he has spent so much time writing this. And it is really not so much for us, but it is for the generations and those spirits, those beings, those people who are going to come on earth like we are, who want to pursue this new life, who want to transform this mortality into immortality, who want to be the apprentice supermen and the super beings, and who want to take this yoga of supramentalization and are meant to do it. This is the guide. This will be the text that will guide them towards that. You see, every yoga has its scripture or its, its book, its guide. So when you had the yoga of the Gita, Sri Krishna had to give that, the gospel of the Gita, the essays on the Gita, he explained the whole yoga of karma and surrender. But that was, it prepared the being, but not to transform mortality into immortality. Now, this is the next text, Savitri, which is a text of transformation of the physical being and of the vital being and of the mental being. The three parts of the outer being, which are in all other yogas, have not been taken up.